We are doing this broadcast as part of our IIITM Next Club, and we are trying to bring the alumni knowledge to the students in IIITM and whosoever can access through our IIITM alumni channel. So for today's session, my name is Shubham, and I'm a 2016 IIITM alumni, and I'm taking lead to do this webinar session along with help of our junior and alumni affairs secretary Vaishnavi. So about today's session, this is a session on MIT's experience by our alumni Shakti Shalikdam. So I would like to welcome Shakti to take important time and spend few minutes with us. And this session will be a half an hour. We'll try to be in that time and don't bore you with a lot of details. So yeah, Shakti, why don't we start with a small introduction of yourself and tell us about you, where you are and what you're doing right now.
Sure. Thanks a ton, Shubham, and thank you for taking this challenge. That's great. And my name is Shakti. I'm from the batch of 2013, and I'm currently pursuing a master's degree at MIT. And my degree is called Integrated Design and Management. It's a 2 years master's, and it is split between the School of Engineering, the Design Center, and the School of Management. And I was in MDM. I don't know. Is it still called MDM?
Yes, it is still, I think it's still
Yeah.
called MDM.
Great. Okay. So I was in MDM, and I was in Ashoka Hostel for the last year of our degree. I think when we moved, and after college, I fellowship for a year, and after that, I took up a job at Make My Trip as a product manager, and I was not very happy with that. I, I realized I think I'm too much of a mechanical engineer to work with those things, and and then I moved to a role in a company called Quidditch. It's a startup that deals with applications of drones. It was started by my friends, and I worked there for about 2.5 years. We had a great time, and at some point that I needed to move on, and master's degree seemed like the best combination of things that I needed, and so now I'm here, and I'm graduating in June.
Okay.
So that's the plan. Yeah.
Cool. Shakti, can you tell us about this integrated design and management program which you're pursuing? What exactly it is?
Right.
And
Right. So it's so the core of the course is that three fields, which is design, engineers, and realize that to make success, you need to be good in all of these three. You need to make something that's desirable that comes through design. You need to make something that's feasible that comes through engineering. And once you've done these, it also has to be viable, and it should be a self-sustaining business that comes through business. And that's the core idea behind this program. And
okay,
you take and so in the first year, you have a design core where they teach you the principles of design, and you go through a few projects to understand and instill the design process. And after that, you're also figuring and business. And the intake for the program is a third engineers, a third designers, and a third business students. So I'm part of the engineering cohort.
all right. So as per the name says, it's integrated design and management. So design is there, management is there. What about engineering? Did they purposefully miss that
Well,
word, or did it?
well, yeah, well, that's an interesting question. So, so MIT is a very small place, as in small place in terms of the amount of area that it spans, and that creates some interesting problems when you want to make something new, because space is a very valuable resource. So I think IIT acres, all of MIT is about 150, almost the same number of students. So when you want to make a new course, it has to follow a few things, and so this is created as a sister course to a course that existed before this, which was called System Design and Management, and and the name came from there, where SDM was the original course, and it was more about systems design, while this is a newer course, and it talks about product design and uses a more design process and naming convention. Although IDM is, and I guess they thought that it's at an engineering school at
Okay.
MIT.
So
So
that's
the
implied.
whole name is actually right. So it's implied. It's MIT IDM is the whole name. So
Okay.
it is. So you have the Institute of Technology. So I think they figured that it's implied. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, you studied at IIIT, then you had a good amount of experience at, say, Ashoka University, then you had work experience. Now you studied at MIT. I think it's almost 2 years. So, what thing that strikes to you in style of,
I can't
say,
hear you.
can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so I was just saying that you had a wide array of experience from, say, IIIT to YIF to
Mhm.
working in a Make My Trip. So, from your experience, what is that unique thing which you find at MIT that differentiate? Of course, it's the engineering caliber and the quality of students, but something which you notice when you are there. What did you notice which makes the I mean, the experience at MIT very unique?
Very unique. Okay, so I think there are a few things that make the experience very unique. One of them, as you mentioned, is the caliber of students, and when I was in college, I was in college. I tried to and any of that, but I was never a very bad student. I was never bottom of my class, and that was. But here, I think even after I try really hard, I sometimes can end up at the bottom of whatever test, and that's because everyone else is just so much better,
Okay.
and and I think it's been a very humbling experience, and when I was naive view where I thought
Shakti, I
about.
can't hear you.
Oops, sorry. Did you? What did you hear
I think I
about
missed the
everything?
last last 2 minutes. Probably not
Oh,
2 minutes.
last
Probably
one.
probably a minute. Probably you can repeat that.
Hello. Hi,
Yeah.
Shubham.
Yeah.
Sorry, I rebooted the system because it was, yeah, wasn't working properly.
All right.
I think it should be slightly better now.
Yep. It is. At least I
That's
can
okay.
hear you now. So.
Okay, great. Um, I think what I was saying was that all in all, it's been a very humbling experience to be here, because I was never a great student in college, but I was never a bad student, and I think ending up at the bottom of the class also has taught me a lot. And more than learning about a lot of things, I think I've also realized that I know so many things. And I think that so there is some fanfare around. I mean, I think I took a class I took a class in my first term, which was at the Aero Astro department, and it was designing human systems engineering, and it spoke about um, designing things with humans in mind, which sounds trivial, but it's not something we always do. And the places that it was applied was mostly space. Less about that. They had a few astronauts in the class. In the first few classes, we had some astronauts who came in and spoke to us about their experience from the space station. So that was
Yeah.
great, and it's very inspiring to see. Here actually used to be an astronaut, and he was on the first mission to fix the so you run into him and there are Nobel laureates who are still teaching. So yeah, it is fun. I think it's also a lot of pressure, but it is fun experience. And I think it sounds daunting, but also students have a lot of fun, and learning is and fun is a big emphasis on learning things.
That sounds really
Sorry,
nice.
that was an
Actually, I
yeah.
really enjoy the teaching. I mean, if you do linear algebra, I didn't enjoy in college, but I think
Right.
Gilbert Strung is there. Who I mean, I'm not sure he's
Mm-hmm.
retired or he's still there, but his was the course I really took, and I kind of looked forward to the next session after every session. So, yeah, I think the
Right.
quality of teaching definitely makes
Mhm.
a difference. So, just to come back to our topic, uh, to your best knowledge, do you how do you compare this program with other product design? Because product design courses, for example, college itself, I mean, I'm not comparing the college, but as such, if you see, we have like mechanical plus product design, what they call is MPD. So similarly,
Mm-hmm.
most of the product courses which are there, they are kind of focused from mechanical perspective. But here, you see, you have
Mm-hmm.
a engineering and management involved in this. So is
Right.
it fair to compare them, or why should one choose one over another?
So right. I think I don't think it's fair to compare them because they are both of them are important. And when you're starting out, it's I think the only way to learn design is to over and over and over again. And I don't have a very good understanding of it either. And I have trouble making decisions sometimes because designing something is most of it is just you have to make you have to make some compromises, and you never want to compromise the experience. So what do you compromise instead? And it's just and learning how to make is something you can only learn by doing these courses over and over again. So I think both of these would be important. And I don't think we had while I was in college. It wasn't called MPD, but we did have a product design course, and that was and when you're in your um, undergraduate program, I think this course would be very basic, but that is important to learn the fundamentals. And then once you've mastered that, I think you combine that with and knowledge about management as well.
Yeah, so the question basically I'm asking is, when we do our undergrad and post that, we have like product design courses. Like if you I mean, if you look at other institute, they have like very specifically they mention it a product design.
Right.
And here, so generally what they
Right.
expect is the student
Right.
more from
Okay.
a background of mechanical engineering or something like that. And I'm
Right.
not sure how the class is divided, but here they don't focus as, I mean, as such, the name doesn't imply any product, but it kind of, I think, create product. So
Right.
can you like tell anything like why should
Right.
one choose one over
Okay.
another?
Right. So I think there are a few uh, maybe a passion for entrepreneurship, and when you're starting from scratch. So when you're starting from scratch and you're building the backbone of a product of a business using a product, you would have to look at all of these things, and then you would have people dedicated to these things, dedicated to just design, dedicated to just engineering, and dedicated to just management. But you would
Okay.
need someone who has skills in all three to communicate between them. So I think a traditional product design course would equip you to design products and design in in a narrower sense, which is also very important to make iterations, and you also need people with those skills. So this is not necessarily only for that narrow skill that concentrated skill. I don't want to use the word
Okay.
narrow, for the concentrated skill of product design. This course gives you a broader understanding of how design, engineering, and business um, intersect, and why that is important for a successful product.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because I think we do need all the skills if we are going to start. So, post this course, where do people generally look for? Do they go down the path of entrepreneurship, or, I mean, of course, there will be a wide array of options people might be pursuing, but where do you generally see the most people going forward after this program?
Well, I think small companies, a lot of people do startup,
Okay,
and I think we've had about 5 or 6 companies that come out of this. One of them was recently acquired by PTC. I don't know. Do we still teach Pro E in college now? It used to be called Pro E when I was in college. Now I think it's Creo, but by the company that acquired one of the companies, and that is an attractive place. But people also go to regular or to big corporate tech firms as well, where people go into Apple and Google, and a couple of people went to Tesla
okay,
last year. But I think the question that you might be wondering is more of the role that people take,
exactly.
because right. So that's a hard question, because very different backgrounds in this course. Like I said, so just the cohort is balanced in such a way that you have a third engineers and designers and business students. So it's hard to give you one answer,
Okay.
but most people, a good proportion, want to eventually start their own thing. That is even though they won't, even if they don't start in college, but eventually. And but that is also saying that it's not a path that you need to be taking, or and that is not the only path.
All right. Yeah, I
And
mean, of course,
yeah, yeah,
it's the right time to start anything is now. So that there goes the
right.
saying. So yeah, coming back to, I think the admission process is very daunting. I was checking through the list of things when you should do the portfolio, the letter of recommendations, and yeah, and whatnot, GRE, GMAT. So yeah, can you tell about how did you go through that and how was your
Okay.
experience? And
Right. hmm Yeah. So, and when I think when I was in college, I had no idea what a portfolio was and how any of those things work. I think people now have a much better understanding of these things.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. So I had to start. I decided to apply about 6 to 7 months before the deadline, and I started talking to my friends who were designers or who'd made portfolios, and I started looking for references online, and 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 I actually used I started making different iterations of the portfolio. First one I made was PowerPoint, and I made one iteration, and it did not look very nice. It did not read well, and I got feedback on that, and I did that a couple of times, and I ended up with the thing I have now. It is daunting. It is a lot of work, but people who are in college right now, I think you have time, and if you want to eventually do that, it is a good idea to apply. It's a good idea to document your work. To I'm not very good at that, but if you don't document your projects, when you're done with it, they as good as don't exist. If your project only exists if you've documented it, because otherwise you've made a prototype, and once you're done with your presentation, you throw it away, and then it's as good as that project never happening. So document your work and save it somewhere, and that'll come in very handy when you're making your portfolio later.
I think that's a good advice. I think I should start doing that. I think I'm working from 2.5 years, so probably I
Yeah.
have quite something to put up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, and it's not. I wish someone had given me that advice, and my life would have been much easier. But it's I had
Yeah.
to do it hard way.
I mean, that's why we are doing that, so that people who will listen and come to know, at least
Mm-hmm.
they start early. So, coming back to the selection, I think regarding portfolio, you mentioned that generally you'll see that most of the people who are doing the actual product, I mean to say mechanical based product, they will have a kind of very nice portfolio. How do the people from other background of engineering, say computer science or say electronics, if they are
Mm-hmm.
from that background, what kind of work they can
Right.
document, and uh, something new, I mean, what work would be worth mentioning? Some pointers if you can mention on that.
I think well, the criteria that I used to down select the projects that I would do was, one is that am I proud of the result? Is that something I like to talk about? And if I'm not proud of it, I don't think that's something that you should. If you're not proud of your work, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be uh, life changing.
Yeah.
If you have to be proud of it, and I think that was the first thing. And the second was, does it demonstrate um, my contribution and what I learned through that project? So that was how I decided. And coming to your original question, um, absolutely. I think and computer science engineers also have can demonstrate their projects using a portfolio. You can also make a website, and you could. I think it's even computer science. If you have a project that is that you can interact with, you can make something that your readers can click on and actually experience what you've made. But that might not be true for all projects. So I had a template for the projects that I was discussing, and it started with context, what and who was the customer, who were we doing this for, or and and what did we learn. And second was innovation. What was our contribution? What did I do that was different than or not entirely obvious? And the third was impact. What was the impact of whatever we'd done? So
Okay.
so I use this template all the projects in my portfolio.
All right.
And in case someone is working on a project and they need some advice, I'm not very good at coding. I made a couple of versions, but I'd be happy to help, and they can write to me. And if I can't help, I can find someone who's better at coding and help you.
Okay, cool. So there was a very general question regarding what is the difference between pursuing a master's at MIT and a master's at at some IIT in India. Uh, I mean, probably if you have some context, you can elaborate on that. Else,
I haven't done a master's at IT, so I don't really know. But I I don't think the difference is in learning. In fact, I don't think you have to go to college to learn anymore. A lot of times when I'm learning something, I'm working on a project, and I learn things when I need to.
okay,
So if I need to learn how to make this using I I would just go online and look up some tutorials, whatever, or look up a project that is closest to it and start hacking on that. It's not so I don't think college is so you would probably learn similar amount. Sure, I think MIT has more resources than IIT, but even IITs have a very good amount of resources.
okay,
Yeah, I think you have global recognition for the brand. IITs have a very good, very strong brand, but mostly in India. Even here, people do know about them, but I think the recognition is easier with MIT. But having said that, I don't think that should be the only reason you pursue a master's, and that's because it's not worth the time and effort in that case.
okay. Uh, there was a question. I mean, it is again is a general question, but I think it's something even I wanted to learn, so I'll ask anyway. So the question is like how to be more creative in our daily life, or how to become a creative person.
Oh, so I've, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that question, but I think and I also don't actively think about it, but or I do know that I'm very curious about things, and if I'm walking by I would like to learn more about it, and it's and I don't really think of it as payoff. It's just something that I'd like to do if I'm walking by and I walk past a lab and I see someone working on something. I think I just go and ask people. So I know this is not an answer to your question, and that's mostly because I don't have an answer. But
Probably I'll pick curiosity as the cue. So which kind of drives to do
sure,
things.
I think at least what drives me is curiosity, and I like learning new things. That introduces me to I think creativity in for me comes with working with new things, and when I learn something new, then I can integrate that with things that I already know, and as I keep learning more, I can make connections that don't already exist. And recently I was reading an essay. Actually, just yesterday I was reading an essay by Isaac Asimov. He's an author, and he's written a lot of science fiction, and he's written an essay. It's an unpublished essay, and it was published a few years ago. Someone found it in their drawer, and he talks about creativity, and he talks about the things that are important in creativity, and he gives the example of Charles Darwin and A. Wallace. I forget his first name, but these two people came up with the theory of evolution at the same time, and he was talking about what was important. So, and what made these things possible. One was just having someone who, and he looked at similarities between these two people. So both of these people had read an essay by someone else on population, which was unrelated to evolution, but both of them had read it. So they were also researching outside. It had nothing to do with biology, but they still went out and read this um, essay on economics. So just going outside, and these people were so eccentric in the sense that they looked at the world how they wanted to look and not necessarily how people thought that they should look. And and this combination and solitude is the other thing, that they were thinking actively about this problem, but um, not necessarily uh, not necessarily in uh, walking around with that. They also sat down and thought about it very deeply. So it's not a very clear cut answer, but I would recommend going out and reading that essay. And that essay does a much better job of explaining this.
Sure, sure. I will try myself and recommend others also to just check that out.
Yeah.
So, probably I think the second last question, I guess. So, how did you choose your recommenders? So, I think one of the things which we need to find is people who can vouch us for well, which is something I think it's a bit tricky for us, mostly in India. Uh, the reason being, I mean, at least from my experience, it is like your recommenders have to know you well. They need to have probably the good writing skills and these kind of thing. So if you have any tips so that in advance we can work on this aspect. uh,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I think if you've said that these are the requirements of choosing someone as a recommender. I think I would say that are not as important as they would be helpful, of course, but more important is to find someone you trust and find someone because going to somebody who does not care for your well-being, they might still write a recommendation, but it won't be recommendation. I don't think you have to go for big names. You don't necessarily need to have the CEO write you a letter. Actually, that is, I would recommend against that. That if you're in a very big company and getting the CEO's recommendation, because everybody knows that the CEO will not have time to write the recommendation. You should go to somebody who will write it themselves and is believable that they will write it themselves.
okay.
And that way, yeah. So it's maybe go to your manager, and even if they haven't, even if you've worked at a company for 2 years, 3 years, and you've had 4 managers, find the one that you like the most and who seems genuinely interested in your well-being, and ask them to write it for you. Your current manager, but someone who knows how you work and is interested in your well-being.
Okay. So probably the last question I'm going to ask. So someone who is going to graduate, say the final year student, what can I think the course which you're pursuing requires 3 years experience. So what can they do in these
Mm-hmm.
3 years? Probably from the quality of work and the kind of experience they can acquire, so that
Mm-hmm.
it values more on your in their if they in future they decide to pursue this course.
Right. Well, I don't think there is a singular career path that will make it better, that will make your application better. I think what is more important is that you find something you are actually passionate about. And if you were in college and you were passionate about maths, or you were passionate about making toys, or you were passionate about working with electronics, and now you're presented with two jobs. One is something data science that you don't. These are all random examples.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
not saying anything about these fields, but if you get a data science job which pays more than a job which is your passion, and you're not, and you don't need the money. As if you need the money, of course, I don't think that that's a question. But if you don't need the money, then follow something that you're passionate about, instead of something, instead of just going for the money, or just going for once you've, if you've already followed your passion, you would be easier to show in your application. And I think people find that inspiring. People find people who are passionate about anything. I think that would give me and also go to a place where you learn something, and something which is not, for mechanical engineers, I'd suggest maybe take an interest in coding. You don't have to become a programmer. You don't have to become you don't have to start writing software, but have an interest and try to learn more about that. But because that gives you ability, that enhances your ability as a mechanical engineer. Learn electronics, learn how machining works and how manufacturing works, because that makes you more valuable. That makes you more valuable than an electrical engineer who knows about these things.
All right. I think with that question, we have come to the
So
end of session.
creativity. Great.
And yeah, thank you guys for listening, and thanks Shakti for taking your time. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Shakti, I would pass on the email to our student volunteers. You can get it from them. And thanks Vaishnavi, and thanks everyone for taking your time out. We'll see you guys later. Bye bye.